So, back in late 2025, Nvidia dropped something that might just fix one of the biggest and, frankly, most dangerous problems in the entire self-driving car world. They rolled out a new kind of AI that doesn't just drive. No, this one thinks out loud.
But before we get into that, let's just ask the big question, right? With all this incredible tech, why are we still so hesitant to trust self-driving cars? It's this huge paradox that's been bugging the industry for years. And, well, it turns out we have a really good reason to be skeptical. I mean, look at this. Public fear actually jumped to 68% in 2023. That is a massive trust gap. It shows that just making the tech work isn't going to cut it. The industry has to tackle this really deep-seated human fear. And to do that, they've got to solve one very, very specific problem. And that problem is what people in the know call the long tail. See, self-driving cars are actually great at handling, say, 95% of normal driving. But it's that last 5%, the weird stuff, the bizarre, the totally unpredictable edge cases, that's where things get really dangerous. And we're not talking about hypotheticals here. These are actual, real-world things that can totally stump an AI. Imagine a mattress falling off a truck right in front of you. Or a person in a gorilla costume crossing the road. What about a traffic cop waving you through a red light? Current systems just aren't built to handle this level of pure, unadulterated weirdness. So what's really going on here? What's the core technical reason these systems fail? To figure that out, we've got to peek inside the AI's mind, or what up until now has basically been a total black box.
Okay, so early on, the systems were all rule-based. Engineers would literally write code like, if the light is red, then stop. Simple enough. But you can't write a rule for every crazy thing that could happen. You definitely can't write a rule for a gorilla in the street. So the industry pivoted to what's called end-to-end learning. This is where an AI just watches millions of hours of humans driving and learns to copy what we do. It's super powerful, but it created a whole new massive problem.
And this is it. This is the infamous black box problem. The AI learns to connect what its sensors see directly to an action, steer, brake, accelerate. But there's no middle step. There's no thinking. So when it messes up, when it swerves for no reason or just flat out misses an obstacle, the engineers have no idea why. They can't look inside and see the logic. It's a black box, which makes it nearly impossible to debug or improve. And this quote from a professor at Carnegie Mellon really just hits you. The first time it sees something different than what it's trained on, does somebody die? I mean, think about that. If an AI has only ever been trained on cars and people, what happens the very first time it encounters a deer, or a fallen tree, or that moped doing a surprise U-turn? It's that terrifying uncertainty that has really held the whole industry hostage. And this is where Nvidia's new model, alpamayo R1, enters the picture. It's being hailed as the world's very first open reasoning model for self-driving. And its solution to that whole black box nightmare? It's actually deceptively simple. Just make the AI explain its thinking before it does anything. Okay, so this is the absolute game changer. Our traditional black box AI sees a cyclist and it just swerves, perception straight to action. But alpamayo R1 adds this incredibly critical step in the middle. It sees the cyclist, it generates a thought, and then it swerves. For the first time ever, engineers can actually see the why behind the what. And this isn't some abstract idea. This is the actual plain English text the AI spits out. They call it chain of causation reasoning. The AI literally says, I see a cyclist encroaching on the lane, so I will slow down and shift left. This completely changes the game. Debugging goes from pure guesswork to actual precise engineering. You know exactly if the car saw the cyclist and made a bad call, or if it never even saw the cyclist to begin with. Okay, but wait, you're probably thinking what I was thinking. Doesn't all this thinking slow the car down? And the answer, amazingly, is no. NVIDIA's tests show that this entire process, from seeing to thinking to acting, happens in just 99 milliseconds. That's absolutely positively fast enough for making real-time decisions on the road. But what's really interesting here is that NVIDIA isn't just dropping some new tech and calling it a day. No, in a pretty surprising move, they're actually open sourcing it. And that could totally change how the entire industry works together on self-driving cars. So why on earth would they just give away something this powerful? Well, it's the classic razor and blade strategy. You give away the software, the razor, for free. This gets the entire industry hooked on your platform. And what does that do?
It drives massive industry-wide demand for what you actually sell, Nvidia's specialized hardware, the blades. It's a brilliant, brilliant move.
And to really get how different this is, you gotta look at the other big players. We're talking about giants like Waymo and Tesla. Each of them has a completely different philosophy on how to solve this puzzle. So you've got Tesla, which is cameras only, a total black box, and it's still at what we call level 2 autonomy. Then there's Waymo, which uses a whole suite of very expensive sensors. It's at level 4, but only in specific pre-mapped zones, and its tech is totally locked down. Alpamayo R1 is basically offering a third path. It uses all the sensors, like Waymo, but it adds that plain English explainability and an open platform model that anyone can build on. It's a whole new approach. And make no mistake, this is not just some science project. Nvidia and Uber have already announced a massive partnership. They're planning to build a mobility network with a target of 100,000 autonomous vehicles. This is serious business, and they're aiming for real-world deployment starting in 2027. Nvidia's CEO, Jensen Huang, really put a fine point on it. What was once science fiction is fast becoming an everyday reality. The goal here isn't just to prove a concept, it's to deploy huge autonomous fleets on a global scale. But to really get what Nvidia is doing, you have to zoom way out. Because this self-driving car AI, it's just one piece, a very public piece, of a much bigger puzzle. The real game for them is something they call physical AI.
So Jensen Huang sees AI coming in 3 big waves. Wave 1 was perception AI, just teaching computers to see and hear. Wave 2 is what we're in right now, generative AI, like ChatGPT that creates things. But he argues the third wave, the biggest one of all, is physical AI. These are systems that don't just understand the world, they can physically interact with it. And what is a self-driving car, really? It's just a robot on wheels. And the amount of money we're talking about here is just astronomical. This isn't about replacing taxis, no. Nvidia is aiming for the entire $50 trillion global manufacturing and logistics industries. They want their chips to be the brains inside every single robot, every autonomous forklift, every delivery drone, and yes, every car.
But okay, let's bring it back down to earth for a second. We need a reality check. This tech is brand new. It hasn't been validated by outside experts. The open source license, that's for non-commercial use only. So companies still have to make a deal with Nvidia. And let's be honest, it probably lags behind Waymo, which has years and millions of miles of real-world driving data. And of course, that huge consumer trust issue, that hasn't just vanished overnight. So when you boil it all down, the true breakthrough here isn't really about building a slightly better driver today. It's about being able to understand why the car is driving the way it is. That's what could finally turn this whole field from a guessing game into a real, systematic engineering discipline. And that brings us right back to where we started. The technology is one thing, but that human element, our trust, that's everything. So the ultimate question for alpamayo R1 and for this whole industry is this. Can an AI that finally explains itself, an AI that shows its work, be the thing that finally truly earns our trust on the road?